It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the biggest deal since Brexit. That's how the government's describing the new free trade agreement with India. Ministers say it will boost the economy by almost £5 billion without any change in immigration policy. Coming up, we'll find out what it means for the government, for British business, and for you. Also tonight, shoplifters mixing with murderers. Sky News gets rare access inside a women's prison. Now, most female inmates are given less than 6 months behind bars for offences which may no longer carry a prison term. When the long-awaited sentencing review is published, we'll have a special report on that. Plus, the latest development in the Wagatha Christie libel case, with Rebekah Vardy ordered to pay Coleen Rooney £1.4 million in legal costs. A judge said today this should be the end of a long and unhappy road. And as events continue to mark VE Day, we'll be discussing a new poll suggesting only a third of young adults know what happened on that day in 1945. And 10% think Captain Mannering led the Allied invasion of Normandy. All that to come, and much more here on the UK Tonight. Good evening, good to have you with us. Now, it's being called the UK's biggest deal since Brexit, a free trade agreement with India that could reportedly boost the UK economy by almost £5 billion. It means cuts in tariffs on Scotch whisky and cars being sold to India, and a reduction to levies on things like clothing coming back the other way. Business leaders say it is a major win for the UK, but Nigel Farage thinks it's a betrayal of British workers. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, has this.
3 years, multiple prime ministers. Finally, Labour's first trade deal over the line with India. Agreed by this man, the business secretary. Smaller than it might have been to get it done in a hurry. But his boss, delighted.
This is the biggest trade deal that we, the UK, have done since we left the EU. And it's the most ambitious trade deal that India has ever done. And this will be measured in billions of pounds into our economy. We have brilliance across the United Kingdom, which will now be showcased and drive our economy in what we can now do with India.
He says he drove a hard bargain, tariffs slashed to boost growth. Big wins for UK whiskey, gin and medical devices. But the overall gain quite small. £5 billion overall increase to GDP. That's just 0.1%. And that doesn't come till the year 2040.
We've been trying to do this trade deal for years. How come it's suddenly materialised?
I think the overriding reason is Donald Trump and that everyone getting scared about the fact that they're going to lose market access into the US, so they wanted to do deals elsewhere.
It seems like quite a coup. Keir Starmer reducing trade barriers at a time when Donald Trump is putting them up everywhere. But people want to know, at what cost? Last week, Reform UK topped the ballot and swept to power in 10 councils, arguing that migrants got unequal treatment. Today, opposition MPs are saying that this trade deal makes that worse.
That's because this deal allows Indian workers transferred to the UK to skip national insurance for 3 years, with employers avoiding the tax as well. Government sources concede this is a win for India, but say Brits going there can benefit as well. The Indian government said this makes their firms significantly more competitive in the UK. The Tory leader says she previously rejected this part of the deal.
I was the one who looked at the detail. I was the one negotiating. I did not sign this deal because I did not think that the double taxation agreement was right for the UK. The numbers are lopsided. This is not the same number of Brits who go to work in India as the number of Indians who come to work in the UK.
The winner of last week's elections thinks this is huge.
For 100 years, we've thought of the Labour Party as being the party of the worker. No longer. Tax burdens going up, and this deal, literally, taxing British workers more, taxing Indian workers less, no limits on numbers. I think, frankly, Labour have completely lost touch with working Britain, and I think politically this could prove to be a fatal error.
The business secretary insists he's shaken hands on a good deal with the Indians that protects British workers and rejected their requests for more visas. But as global trade deals are no longer in fashion as they once were, will he convince the public? Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Breaking news to bring you now from Derby, where two men have been arrested in connection with the death of a man in the city. He was a customer who was stabbed inside the Lloyds Bank on St Peter Street at around about 2:35 in the afternoon today. He was aged in his 30s and pronounced dead at the scene. Formal identification has not taken place, but his family have been made aware. Later on today, at around about 6 o'clock, a man in his 40s was arrested at a property in Weston Road in Normanton on suspicion of murder, and a man in his 30s was arrested at the same property on suspicion of assisting an offender. Both remain in police custody, and police say in Derby that there will be a presence by them in the city centre for some time to come. So just to reiterate, two men have been arrested over the stabbing of a man in the Lloyds Bank in St Peter Street in Derby that happened around 2:35 in the afternoon today. And that man in his 30s was pronounced dead at the scene. Next, more than half the women who are serving time in prison in England and Wales were sentenced to less than 6 months behind bars. And now more questions are being asked about whether prison is really the best form of punishment for some of them. Sky News has been given rare access to a women's prison where many inmates are serving time for non-violent crimes, things like shoplifting or minor drug offences, the sort of offences for which custodial sentences could soon be scrapped. Sky correspondent Molly Malone has this special report now from Foston Hall Women's Prison in Derbyshire, and a warning: it includes references to self-harm.
We're inside a women's prison in Derbyshire.
Good luck, because there's a hole here.
The government think many of those that are here shouldn't be. That prison isn't the best form of punishment for them. The majority are serving short sentences of less than 6 months.
From the age of 15, I've not really had a very good life, so I've just been in and out of prison most of my life now.
This is Connie. She has 9 shoplifting convictions. Do you think you should be in prison?
To be quite honest, I steal from shops, so probably, yeah.
Do you think people should be in prison for theft?
It depends what kind of theft. Like, my kind of theft, I eat chocolate from shops and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So definitely not, 100% not. But they're just, it is just what it is, isn't it?
At points, she's been homeless and addicted to drugs. Stuck, she says, in a cycle.
So I used to just, like, come to prison just to keep myself safe before. But this prison, you're not safe in it. I never self-harmed till I come to this prison. And I've started self-harming really, really bad. You don't seem to get heard unless you self-harm in this prison. It's disgusting.
Connie will sometimes only be in jail for a matter of weeks. Still, plenty of time in her cell to think. What have you left kind of on the outside? What's sort of going through your mind?
It's sad to say, really, because there's nothing really out there. I do have a son, he's 13, but I haven't seen him for many years now. I have no help whatsoever in how to approach and getting him back into my life.
Do you think about your son? I mean, do you miss him?
Yeah, all the time, definitely. I know this might sound harsh, but I think it's got to the point now I don't know what to miss about him, but I think about him every single day, of course I do, yeah.
We asked the prisons minister what he thinks about Connie's situation.
Well, it's really sad to hear. You know, we're dealing in the female prison estate with some of the most complex people in the country. And the example of Connie, I see lots of people like Connie, sadly, in the prison system.
There will be people, though, that sort of see Connie's story, see that she's a repeat offender and feel that she should be in prison, that she deserves to be in prison. I mean, what would you say to that?
For lots of women, prison is the right place to be. But where there are certain circumstances, for example, for non-violent offences, for women, over half of women in prison have children. You need to work out what is the right path to make sure that they don't commit further crime.
Many are committing further crimes, in and out of jail for short periods of time. Prison for some feels better than life outside. It's Donna's 3rd time at this jail.
I don't mind prison, to be honest. I think it's like rehab. I know you get clean when you're here, do you know what I mean? And I needed it.
Do you feel like you're losing time?
You feel like you've wasted a lot of your life, yeah. A lot goes through your head here, a lot. I call you mistakes.
And do you see lots of people coming in and out of prison?
All the time, yeah.
Time that feels wasted and a heavy churn of people. Not exactly a recipe for rehabilitation.
What's the biggest barrier to stopping reoffending?
The time to rehabilitate. They're reoffending because they don't know anything better. They're entrenched in criminal backgrounds. They've been committing crimes since tiny ages, and we need the time to break that cycle, really. Maybe a different approach.
Part of that cycle is about drugs and addiction, sometimes made worse when in prison.
You can just get drugs so easy in here. It's meant to be a punishment in prison, and really, some people look at it like it's a life of luxury in here. You know what I mean? They come here because they get fed. They come here because they've got a bed. Do you know what I mean? They come here because they can get a job. And do you know what I mean? People like to come here as it's like a holiday camp for some people.
Amanda is the drug strategy lead here. She works in a wing dedicated to prevention and recovery.
How big of a problem are illegal drugs in prison?
They're the main problem of everything that we work towards every single day. They're the main drivers for violence. They can cause self-harm issues. They cause vulnerability. I'd say that illicit drugs are our main issue day to day in everything that we do.
And people, when they come in here, they have quite complex needs.
Yeah, really complex.
Another big issue that everyone referenced was mental health.
For the people that are mentally unwell, I think quite a few that probably shouldn't even be here. They're more suitable for secure hospitals.
The levels of self-harm here are some of the highest in the women's estate.
It's a 40-bed unit.
People are prisoners, but staff think some should be patients.
Mental health is the most acute one at the moment in terms of the volume of women that are coming in that are extremely unwell. Substance misuse, domestic violence. The majority of the women here have been a victim themselves during their life. They've experienced abuse from childhood.
On her way out of prison as we filmed, we met Tilat. She was prosecuted for smuggling in an item while visiting someone, also in prison. It was her first offence. She served less than 3 months.
So not long, but
no,
it felt like a long time?
It felt like years, to be honest.
In her bags, there was a CV that Tilat had prepared for when she left, but she didn't seem hopeful.
How are you feeling about leaving?
It's a very hard thing to do, I think. As soon as coming out of them gates, I think you just have hundreds and thousands of things going through your head. How you're going to manage, what you're going to do. Because when I came in, I had a job. I ain't got a job now. I was working in the NHS as a cleaner for 18 years. I think it's a bit bad having a conviction.
Do you feel sort of supported? Do you feel stressed about?
The prisoners gave me enough support as possible, but the prison can't hold my hand outside. So when I'm outside, I'll have to hold my own hand.
Going forward, some offenders will require support outside, as politicians look to send fewer people to prison.
We're about to see potentially a quite significant shift in sentencing policy, and even though the women prison population is small, they could become a big part of the conversation, and that's because lots of them are serving short sentences. Some of them will be scrapped. They're considered to be, many of them, victims of crime themselves, and the government see them as a vulnerable group, perhaps not best punished in prison.
It makes it worthwhile, you know, it makes...
Instead, they'll be looking to places like this, a women's centre in Nottingham.
If we look at poverty, if we look at adverse childhood experiences, if we look at trauma, if we look at mental health, they all contribute to the reasons that people end up involved in the criminal justice system.
Women here get counselling, free legal advice and help with employment or housing. It's part funded by the government and for those serving community sentences or those on probation after they leave prison.
When I got released, I thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to get a job? No one's going to want to take me on.
I think what happens when a man goes to prison is that there is usually a woman holding everything together. Usually when women are sent to prison, it's for short sentences. It's not a long enough time for anything productive to happen. It's just long enough to rip their entire lives apart.
So if I take you through to the welcome space to start with.
This place is seen by ministers as the future for certain offenders, but those that run it say things need to change.
Prison isn't the only way of holding women to account for their behaviour. And if we want to hold them to account and we want them to change and not reoffend, then we've got to build something that is very different. And if the benefit of that, all of that wraparound service is recognised, and we want it to be sustainably available for women so that they have the opportunity to change their decision making, then it needs to be funded sustainably. We are considerably cheaper than a prison sentence, and whilst the work is intensive, it is effective.
The government has a prison overcrowding crisis and so wants to see change. They have two priorities when it comes to the criminal justice system: send fewer people to prison, but also clamp down on low-level crime. They are conflicting challenges, and they'll have to take the public with them. Molly Malone, Sky News.
Molly is here with me now in the studio. Fascinating watch, Molly. Really eye-opening about what life is like in a woman's prison. People will watch that and think, well, I have different views on whether these women should be in there or not based on the crimes they've committed. But when you hear from Donna there that sometimes it's just easier for them to be inside, it's almost like a holiday camp, well, that shows these places aren't working.
Yeah, I think that's right, and that's certainly the government's view, is that prison isn't working. That's why they've commissioned the sentencing review, essentially to send less people to prison. I think I spent a couple of days with access to the prison, but also the criminal justice system more broadly, and I think a couple of things stood out. One was that in a women's prison, there was no one story. Sort of as you alluded to, you've got people like Donna saying it's better for me in here, people like Connie saying I need to get out, it's dangerous, it's not safe. So there was no one story, and there were complex needs. Lots of the people there were severely unwell. The staff were saying many of them should be in hospital and not in prison. Lots of them had children on the outside. Many of them said that they'd been victims of domestic abuse. So there was no one straightforward story. There were lots of sort of factors at play. But something else which stood out, and actually in the Women's Centre, was that that's seen as sort of an alternative to prison, so the potential future. So people, lower level offenders, essentially checking in with the centre, getting free legal advice, getting help, getting counselling, getting support. But at the moment, places like that, despite their intentions, they're not seemingly scaled up the way that the government will need them to be in the next year or two. If we start sending hundreds, if not thousands, less people to jail, they're just not, they don't feel that they're being sustainably funded. They don't feel that the kind of intention is there to kind of keep them servicing these women in the way that they need to. And all the women there, every single woman in that women's centre said, even when I've come to the end of my probation period, I want to stay here. I just need it. Keep it going, please. And I'm just not sure at the moment those services are kind of set up to and sort of scaled up to service what they need it to service. I think going forward there are lots of questions to answer. The sentencing review will help nudge the government in the right direction as to where they want to kind of head when they send less people to prison. But for so long, the status quo has been that prison works. And actually right now, even though that many reformers sort of broadly agree that prison isn't working, the alternatives, it's going to take quite a long time to figure out what they look like.
Molly, fascinating. Thank you very much. Now, buildings across the country are being lit up tonight as part of a week of events to mark Victory in Europe Day 80 years ago. Earlier, the Queen visited the Tower of London to see an installation of thousands of ceramic poppies reflecting the sacrifices made during the Second World War. She also joined the King to mark the second anniversary of his coronation. Our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, has more.
A military spectacle again rang out. This time, gun salutes marking another anniversary. 2 years since the King and Queen's coronation. As across London, they unveiled another important tradition. 2 new portraits painted to immortalise the moment that they were crowned. It is a week of marking moments past. This shower of poppies, not a crown, but symbolising a crater. Some of the 30,000 ceramic flowers back at the Tower that you might just remember from that remarkable display for the centenary of the First World War. The Tower of London is known for so many things, but as that part of the installation is meant to show us, it was also hit by bombs during the Second World War. The poppies, of course, had such a huge impact the last time they were here that I'm told it was decided it was only right that they should return at this important point of remembrance.
I recognise it, but you're still looking very strange.
The Queen was overseeing the official opening with some help. Poppies passed from 2 veterans to her and 5-year-old Harrison, whose mother Tracy is a yeoman warder.
So rightly, the poppies ask a great deal of the world.
The 2 of them placing the final pieces as a shared mark of respect.
I did a poppy with the Queen, and this is the Queen's poppy. So we chatted about all the poppies being here, and it was really, really, nice for them to be here.
Each one of these poppies represents a man that's given his life for this country. I'm very respectful to them, and I realise that these men, they're not coming back home.
Paul Cummins, who made the flowers, is still amazed at the conversations they spark.
It's a passage into the past, and it's sort of an easier way to show people, and then you can introduce them to the veterans who love to tell their stories, and then we can go from there.
Prince George had his own first-hand history lesson at yesterday's tea party. The picture of a prince, a future king, in training. The royals are all about making sure their memories are not forgotten, as they lead the tributes in a week that is all about talking and sharing, whatever your family's story may be. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News, at the Tower of London.
Well, in about half an hour, a lot of buildings are going to be lit up to mark the VE Day commemorations. But right now, as you can see, 10 Downing Street is lit in red. Well, red and blue, really, not quite red, white and blue there, but red and blue to mark 80 years almost since victory in Europe Day, to mark the end of the war, and keeping with the King's hope that younger people will learn more about the Second World War and the sacrifice of the generations that came before them. We'll be discussing a new poll later on suggesting 4 in 10 British people don't know what VE Day is, and around 10% of young adults think the Allied invasion of Normandy was led by Captain Mannering from Dad's Army. Surprised they even can remember Dad's Army, but there you go. We'll discuss that later on. Still to come, though, on the UK Tonight. A judge tells Rebekah Vardy to pay Coleen Rooney £1.4 million in legal costs over their long-running so-called Wagatha Christie saga. We'll have all the details of that. Also ahead, a jury hears how one of the men accused of felling the famous tree at the Sycamore Gap could not understand the public outcry because it was just a tree. We'll have the latest from court. And Sir David Attenborough launches what he calls one of the most important films of his very long and illustrious career. We'll have the latest from the premiere in central London as the broadcaster meets the King.
Show of military might and menace.
Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Now, a judge has ordered Rebekah Vardy to pay Coleen Rooney £1.4 million in legal costs over their so-called Agatha Christie court case. Let's get more on this now from Sky's Alice Porter, who joins me from the newsroom. Alice, it's been a real saga. In the time this has taken, you probably could have read all 66 of Agatha Christie's books.
That's right. This saga has been going on since 2019. Can you believe it? That was when Coleen Rooney made that explosive post on social media. Coleen Rooney, the wife of the former England striker Wayne Rooney. Now, she said on social media that she had undertaken a month-long sting operation and accused Rebekah Vardy of leaking private personal information to the media. Now, Rebekah Vardy, who's the wife of the footballer Jamie Vardy, she tried to sue Coleen Rooney for libel, and this was a very public court case in 2022, and clearly a very expensive one too, but she was unsuccessful. The judge found the claim by Coleen Rooney was substantially true. But then the pair were locked into yet another battle when it came to paying for Coleen Rooney's legal costs. But today we have heard the news from the judge that Rebekah Vardy will have to pay £1.4 million to Coleen Rooney. It was going to be 1.2, but that's now gone up to 1.4 for what's called assessment costs, which were requested by Coleen Rooney. Lawyers for Mrs Rooney said that in their written submissions that Mrs Vardy was the author of her own misfortune. And today, a judge said, "I hope that this is the end of a very long and unhappy road."
Yeah, not sure there's room for another twist in this one, is there? Thank you very much indeed, Alice. Now, a jury has heard how one of the two men accused of felling the famous Sycamore Gap tree could not understand the public outcry because it was just a tree. Prosecutors say 39-year-old Daniel Graham and 32-year-old Adam Carruthers drove overnight from Carlisle to the Northumberland landmark in September 2023 and cut the tree down with a chainsaw. The pair each denied 2 counts of criminal damage. Sky's North of England correspondent Fraser Maud has more.
The prosecution alleges that Daniel Graham and Adam Carruthers both travelled under the cover of night and during Storm Agnes in September 2023 from their homes in Carlisle.
Well, we're going to leave that there because Mark Carney is still in Washington, D.C., having met with President Trump in the Oval Office, as we regularly see now with world leaders, a bit earlier on. And he is now addressing the press there. Let's listen.
Leaders of 2 sovereign, independent nations. And I want to thank the President and the members of his cabinet that attended for welcoming me and my colleagues to the White House and for our very constructive discussions. I conveyed to the President today what our countries have long proven to be true, that Canada and the United States are stronger when we work together. We can get a better deal for our workers. We can create more opportunities for our businesses. We can build stronger economies across North America when we work together. And really today marked the end of the beginning of a process of the United States and Canada redefining that relationship of working together. The question is how we will cooperate in the future, how we can build an economic and security relationship built on mutual respect, built on common interests, and that delivers transformational benefits to our economies. We had what I would describe as wide-ranging and, as I said a moment ago, very constructive discussions. We agreed to have further conversations in the coming weeks, and we are looking forward to meeting in person at the G7 summit in Kananaskis in Alberta. Now, while that's going on, in Canada, we will focus on what we can control. Alors, demain, je réunirai avec les premiers ministres pour un appel afin de faire le point sur les conversations que nous avons eues ici aujourd'hui et de discuter du travail qui nous attend. We are going to reinforce our strength at home. We will reinforce Canada's security for an increasingly dangerous and divided world. We will transform our border security in the Arctic, and our support for our allies. We'll build an economy that creates jobs, grows incomes, and withstands shocks, when in fact the strongest economy in the G7. An economy that works for everyone. Nous allons bâtir une économie canadienne renouvelée, où tous peuvent réussir dans un monde qui est en train d'être profondément transformé. Nous allons bâtir les infrastructures qui permettront à nos entreprises de rejoindre de nouveaux marchés autour du monde. Et nous allons bâtir une seule économie canadienne, pas 13. We are masters in our own home, and we can give ourselves far more than any foreign government can ever take away. So now is the time to build, and based on the discussion today, to build at home and to build with our partners abroad, including the United States. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now begin the press conference. We'll begin with questions from the traveling delegation. First question, Première question.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star. I was watching your face through the meeting in the Oval Office, and I wondered what was going through your mind when the President talked about erasing the artificial border and how he criticized your predecessor and Madam Freeland.
Thank you for your question. I'm glad that you couldn't tell what was going through my mind as that was going through. With respect to the first point, the President has made known his wish about that issue for some time. I've been careful always to distinguish between wish and reality. I was clear there in the Oval Office, as I've been clear throughout on behalf of Canadians, that this is never going to happen. Canada is not for sale. It never will be for sale. Some things, as I said in the room, some things are never for sale. And he agreed with that. I distinguish between the two. And then with respect to the importance of reestablishing a constructive relationship for negotiations of a partnership, of an economic and security partnership, which is what we were here for. I look forward, not back, and I think we established a good basis today.
What gives you specifically any indication that the President is willing to renegotiate a new trade deal with you and drop tariffs?
Apart from the fact that he said that he would, is willing to have that negotiation, I think that's the main thing. That doesn't presuppose the outcome of the negotiation. As I've emphasized, this is a complex negotiation. There'll be zigs and zags, difficult aspects to it, but the prospect is there. We discussed it in more detail, and as I said a moment ago, we'll be following up both between officials, but also he and I in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Bon, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bonjour, Monsieur Carney.
Bonjour, Madame.
Avec quoi ressortez-vous concrètement de cette rencontre avec Monsieur Trump?
Ouais, nous avons eu une discussion à travers des sujets géopolitiques et des sujets et des enjeux qui impliquent les relations commerciales du Canada et des États-Unis. Nous avons un trajet concret. Nous avons eu un échange des perspectives en ce qui concerne les tarifs, les objectifs stratégiques des États-Unis, les objectifs stratégiques du Canada. Et il y a plusieurs enjeux sur lesquels on peut avancer les discussions. Alors, il y a un plan qui existe et une volonté qui existe entre les deux pays d'avancer les discussions. Mais il n'y a pas de décision sur n'importe quel tarif aujourd'hui.
quand il a été question, quand on a posé la question à M. Trump sur les tarifs, s'il avait l'intention, si vous pouviez faire quelque chose pour les lever, pour les supprimer, il a dit non. Comment est-ce que vous l'interprétez?
Well, just as Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, answers questions in French there, just a reminder that he is addressing the press in Washington, D.C. Some 2 or so hours having met President Donald Trump inside the White House in the Oval Office. If you didn't see it, all seemed relatively friendly. Hard to tell, isn't it, what's going on behind the scenes, although much of that has spilled in front of the cameras in the Oval Office in recent months, I'm sure you've noticed. But the main point that came out from that was Mark Carney saying Canada will never be for sale. Donald Trump said never say never, to which Mark Carney seemed to voice the word never. Canada not for sale. Donald Trump was very kind to Mark Carney in terms of congratulating him on his recent electoral victory. Certainly, there was no love lost between Donald Trump and Mark Carney's predecessor, Justin Trudeau. But Donald Trump seems to, on the surface at least, have a better relationship with the man on your screen right now. I think he's back speaking English, so let's listen to some more.
And for the tariffs to not make any economical sense to be made in Canada anymore, do you anticipate lifting tariffs on autos at any point? And what did you tell him in the room about that topic?
Well, we had discussion about all the major issues in the room, so to speak, in the lunch afterwards, including autos, and specifically, without going into the full details, the strategic position of the North American auto industry, or more specifically the Canadian-U.S. auto industry, versus foreign competition, including from Asia, and how that could be enhanced. I and the Canadian government, and I would say the Canadian auto industry, I would actually say the auto industry as a whole, is of the view that Canada, the Canadian auto workers, Canadian auto companies, Canadian parts companies, Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, all play an important role in enhancing the competitiveness of American auto companies. So we will continue to press that case and look for an arrangement that takes full advantage of it for the benefit of the United States, but of course, from our perspective, very much for the benefit of Canada.
And what did he ask you about China in your closed-door meetings, and what did you tell him?
That's why they're closed door. Well, yeah. We had a wide-ranging discussion.
Next question, prochaine question.
Bonjour, M. Carney. Michel Sabat, la presse canadienne. Je vais essayer de faire du chemin sur la question de ma collègue Mélanie un peu plus tôt. Est-ce que vous repartez avec quoi que ce soit de tangible au niveau du commerce?
Well, as Mark Carney continues to take questions in French, I think it's a good time to bring in David Blevins, our correspondent who's in Washington now. David, we're used to other leaders appearing with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, the newly refurbished Oval Office of the White House, and them always generating at least one headline. It seems to be Canada will never be for sale is the one from today.
Yes, Donald Trump welcoming Mark Carney to an Oval Office which he said had been refurbished with love and carat gold. Well, there was much more gold on display today than there was love, because it's very clear there is still some distance between the US president and his Canadian counterpart when it comes to the issue of annexation. Now, he was very clear that Canada was not for sale, but for much of the encounter between them, we were reading body language. So it's interesting that the first question at this press conference has been about what was going through his mind when Donald Trump returned to one of his favourite subjects, discussing the possibility of Canada becoming the 51st state. He replied, "I'm glad you couldn't see what was going through my mind, so read from that what you will." But he did say he felt it was his job in the West Wing today to distinguish between wish and reality. The wish of Donald Trump to see Canada become part of the United States, and the reality, as far as the Canadians are concerned and have clearly voted, that that is not ever going to happen. I think it would be fair to sum up Mark Carney's approach today in 4 words: the people have spoken. Because when Donald Trump suggested that it would be better for the people in Canada for annexation to take place, Mark Carney replied, "Well, Well, actually, I've been talking to the people on the campaign trail in recent weeks, the owners of Canada, as he described them, and their message was very simple, that Canada will never be for sale.
David, thank you very much indeed. Back here, the effects of a major cyber attack on some of the UK's biggest retailers are still being felt weeks on from the initial attack. Card and contactless payments were affected in some Co-op stores today, and the supermarket chain is also facing some product shortages, with M&S still reporting similar issues. Joining me now to discuss this is ethical hacker and cyber awareness trainer Rob Shapland. Rob, it's good to see you. Just explain what an ethical hacker is, because people might hear the word hacker and think you're a baddie.
Yeah, so I hack, but on the good side. So I get in and then I show you how I did it and then help you protect against it. And my focus is on social engineering, which is the same techniques they've used in these attacks.
Yes.
So I make phone calls to companies pretending to be from their IT service desk. I even dress up as an employee or a cleaner and try and get into the building as well.
Are you successful at that?
Most of the time, yeah. It's surprisingly easy most of the time, unfortunately, yeah.
Wow. Because people hear hacker and they think it's, let's categorise this, let's stereotype this as teenage boys in their rooms, brilliant on computers and doing it quietly. But actually, in these instances, it's not that at all, is it?
No, it's not. So it is teenagers in some cases,
yeah,
but they're not focused so much on the technical side, you know, the typical hacker you think of in a hoodie banging away at a keyboard.
Yeah.
It's more like the human side. So they're targeting people and the kind of weaknesses in psychology. So they're phoning up IT service desks, pretending to be employees of the company, perhaps using information they found on social media. So if I was pretending to be you, for example, I might be able to find out your date of birth from somewhere by looking at your Instagram profile, and there's a picture of you on your birthday and it says happy birthday.
I was worried that you've been snooping around me online, but it's out there, so what can I say? So I'm already terrified. But that's what it's down. So we're all being too leaky with our information, are we? And that's allowing these hackers to really have a big impact, a negative impact on huge brands like M&S and the Co-op.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about it from an IT perspective, if I've forgotten my password, I need to phone up and say I've forgotten my password, and they need to help you, but they need to authenticate who you are in some ways. So they might not do that at all. They might just take your name and go, yeah, here's your new password. Or they might say to you something like, what's your date of birth? Or where do you work? Or who's your boss? And all that information is out there. You know, you look on LinkedIn, you can find out how long someone's worked at an organisation, who their boss is, what department they're in, what company, what office, etc. So that information is out there, and you might be able to answer those security questions and then get that password reset over the phone, especially if you say it's really urgent, just about to go into an urgent meeting, and you pretend to be someone in authority.
I'd seen recently as well, you might be dressing up as a cleaner to get into buildings, but people accessing things like Teams and Zoom meetings and showing up. And there's always that, even if you're in a big meeting like that, there's always that person with the camera switched off and you think, well, they just want some privacy or they're not going to engage in this. But that could be someone just hoovering up the info.
Yeah, absolutely, sitting in the meeting listening. But also, it's not nowadays not just about having the camera off. I could go into a meeting pretending to be you using some of the deep fake technology that's available now. So I could take an image of your face, create a fake copy of you, join a Teams meeting in real time, just from a single image, and then I can speak and act like you. So imagine if you were the boss of a large company, you got one of those meetings to say, we need to do this urgent transaction straight away. You might get a huge sum of money transferred.
Yeah, I mean, I quite like to pretend to be the boss of a large company, but being serious about this for a second, the knock-on effects for the businesses of M&S and Co-op are huge, and they're still struggling to get a handle on this days, weeks later.
Well, yeah, so behind the scenes, it's going to be absolute chaos based on my experience of dealing with companies that had this happen, because the hackers are not just getting in and messing around. They're deploying ransomware, that software that scrambles the entire network. Then they're asking for a huge ransom payment. But what that means is that nothing's working. And the signs we see of that are the payment cards not working, the contactless tills, etc. But in the back end, you imagine being those staff trying to fix all those myriad systems. And a company of M&S size has thousands and thousands of computers behind the scenes, and they all stop working. It's all down to pen and paper and things.
Yes, and there are real-world effects. I went into an M&S last week, and they were out of their famous prawn sandwiches. And this is because their computers can't talk to each other internally like they would do previously. The shops can't talk to the supply hubs at the moment in a lot of cases.
Yeah, exactly. Behind the scenes, literally nothing will be working. So you're trying to get systems up and running that are completely broken. All the data's encrypted. And it's very hard to get that information back. Even if you have backups of that data, it takes time to get those working again. And also, they've got to find whether the hackers have gone from the systems. There's no point in fixing stuff and then the hackers just rewrite it again because they're still there. So you've got to kind of kick them out first before you can do anything else.
You're an ethical hacker for hire, testing the systems. Do the authorities have people like you who are going to find these perpetrators and bring them to heel, bring them to, suffer the consequences?
Well, that's the idea. So already previously, some of the members of this group have been arrested, but it's very difficult to track these people. Now, some of these are based in potentially the UK, US, Europe, so they're a little bit
English-speaking, aren't they?
Yeah,
Native
exactly.
English-speaking,
which is relatively unique. Normally, we think of hackers being further abroad than that, using different languages, etc. I think it's very difficult to get them, even if you know who they are.
Yeah.
But if these hackers are based in the UK, there's a much greater chance we'll find out who they are and catch them.
Rob, it's great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Please don't go snooping around my information. That's concerning, isn't it? OK, now, as he approaches his 100th year, Sir David Attenborough is showing no signs of slowing down, launching what he calls one of the most important works of his career. The new cinema-length film, Ocean, is premiering this evening at the Royal Festival Hall in London, with the King among the special guests in attendance. Sir David hopes it will play a decisive role in saving biodiversity and protecting the planet from climate change. Still to come here on the UK Tonight, the shocking new poll that reveals major gaps in the public's knowledge of VE Day. And a twist in the tale of Trent Alexander-Arnold's departure from Liverpool as Real Madrid attempt to fast-track a transfer.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna.
We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Omdurman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
The Premier League run-in is live on NBC and streaming on Peacock as the race for Europe intensifies. Saturday, Aston Villa chase Champions League qualification when they visit Bournemouth. Sunday, newly crowned Premier League champions Liverpool back on their perch host Arsenal. This is the Premier League run-in, live on NBC and Peacock.
Now, coming up, the warning that nearly 4 in 10 Brits do not know what happened on VE Day. We'll speak to a military historian in a few minutes. But first, Teddy is here with the sport. Teddy, let's talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold of Liverpool. Announced he is going to leave the club at the end of the season on social media yesterday. I think a lot of fans probably expected this was going to happen because he's out of contract. Most likely to go to Real Madrid, although certainly not confirmed. But behind the scenes, we're hearing that Real Madrid want to sign him before his contract expires at Liverpool. Why?
Well, there's a big thing happening that a lot of people from the Premier League have had a bit of disdain for, but certainly in European circles and South American circles, big event, Club World Cup from UEFA in America, which Real Madrid are going to be there. as the former European champions, and they're going to be playing in Miami in the Hard Rock Stadium on June the 18th. The problem is that Trent's technically contract takes him up to June the 30th, which I think wouldn't usually be a problem in terms of training, etc., with Real Madrid. But with this instance, they want him to be there. It's a Spanish-speaking city to a large extent, isn't it? It's going to be a big event in Miami. But the question is now, will he be released? And what looks like is going to have to happen, Real Madrid sounded out Liverpool in the aftermath of Trent making the sort of emotional social media announcement yesterday about leaving his boyhood club. Haven't yet come back with an offer. The only difficulty there is that they're probably going to be under new management with Carlo Ancelotti leaving. Could be former Liverpool and Real Madrid player Xabi Alonso who's going to become their next head coach. What he wants to do may influence it, but we'll wait now to see if Real Madrid come in and offer Liverpool a bit of bonus money, I suppose, a free transfer, but maybe some cash so that Trent can play in the Club World Cup in Miami on June the 18th and then a game against Salzburg. That's the situation then regarding Trent Alexander-Arnold. That story continues, so we'll keep you across that. But up next, we've got Champions League build-up for Arsenal, an update on Barca Inter Milan.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Dowling's idea about coaches is an interesting one. 42% of Premier League first-team coaches across the last 6 seasons have been English. 56% have been British. The Premier League are also committed to coach development, launching an elite coaching plan in 2020 with a clear philosophy: better coaches lead to better players. Through that, they've supported 480 coaches and coach developers over the last 5 years. Alongside that, there's the Professional Coaching Partnership, bringing together the Premier League, FA, EFL, League Managers Association and others to offer further support for coaches. The League Managers Association, which represents managers in our top 4 divisions, told us they run a significant number of qualifications and personal development services for English coaches, all of which are oversubscribed, they say. But they admit that the football industry in this country is competitive, volatile and short-term. They say increased foreign ownership of English clubs and the purchasing power of English football mean clubs can scour the globe, and that has...
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Cheers, Teddy. Time for a quick look now at the weather.
The ideal atmosphere, whatever the altitude. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
High pressure will keep things settled this week with varying amounts of cloud. It'll turn warmer by the weekend, but it won't be as hot as it was last week. Most places look fine this evening, if breezy in the southeast, but the odd light shower is possible. Expect, for the most part, a dry night, but cloud amounts will vary with the clearest skies in the north and the west. A patchy ground frost is likely there as well, with a bit of fog forming in places too. It will stay largely dry tomorrow morning with bright or sunny spells, but isolated showers are still possible again.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Now, a new poll suggests nearly 4 in 10 British people are unable to say what happened on VE Day. The poll carried out by More in Common for LBC exposed notable gaps in the public's knowledge of the Second World War. The poll suggests only a third of 18 to 24-year-olds know what VE Day was. A similar proportion of under 35s, 36%, could say what year the Battle of Britain took place. And perhaps most amazingly, it suggests that 10% of 18 to 24-year-olds think the Allied invasion of Normandy was led by Captain Mannering from Dad's Army. Military historian Peter Caddick-Adams joins me now to talk about this. I'm just astounded people even know what Dad's Army is, given that goes back quite a long way.
Takes us back to another generation, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. But what do you think about the statistics? Do you think it's a shame that people don't know enough about the war?
I'm sanguine in terms of, I mean, if you turn those statistics on their head, it means that a fair proportion do understand when the Battle of Britain was fought, do understand that the Normandy invasion wasn't led by Captain Mannering and, you know, all the other different bullet points about the Second World War and the whole purpose of VE Day. So some of the message is getting through, and perhaps we're just over expecting what it should be in the heads of young people.
Yeah.
I mean, there are all sorts of ways of educating them, and some knowledge, deep knowledge, comes to people much later on in their careers.
Let me address that. There's all sorts of ways of educating people. I have a 15-year-old daughter myself who is doing the Second World War for her GCSE right now. A lot of kids are. A lot of us did it when we did GCSEs, so surely the knowledge is there.
Well, it quite often rests with the teachers rather than the students or the pupils. And some, you know, you react when you make a jigsaw puzzle from the information that you already have. That's the best way we learn in any sphere. You build on the knowledge you already have. So you're starting, in a lot of cases, with a blank slate with young people who are learning about the Second World War for the first time. But if we then move on, and later on in their learning careers, perhaps they go off and do a degree, that's when all the sort of, you know, the essential jigsaw puzzle pieces come together. Or they go and see, you know, whatever the equivalent is of Saving Private Ryan, or, you know, whatever war film happens to be on there, or they play a video game or streaming, whatever it is. And making models comes to, you know, people much, much later on in life. So there are plenty of ways of addressing what you and I would call a sort of knowledge shortfall.
Yes. The thing is, I think we're just going to see some pictures now, because a lot of buildings are being lit up around the country to mark, of course, the anniversary this week of VE Day. I think that's Big Ben being lit up there, the Elizabeth Tower.
Yeah, I saw number 10 was lit up.
And number 10 was lit up red, white and blue. And, well, there you go. The Union flag as well, or a version of it being lit up on.
So, and there's that wonderful cascade of poppies around the Tower of London.
Yeah.
So hopefully this will appear on Sky, and the kids range around the television or looking at their mobile phones, or however you look at your streaming news now, will say, what's all that about?
And ask the question. The thing is, for a lot of people of a certain age, they would have been able to ask their grandparents. And actually that generation has long diminished now, given that it's 80 years since the end of the war in Europe. There aren't many people left to give us that verbal history now.
We were struggling to find 30, 40 veterans who were able to turn up to these major functions that began yesterday and will culminate on the 8th of May. And that's, you know, that's the passage of time, just like we worship the last few veterans of the First World War before they were gone. So we have to recognise that, you know, their time has come very, very soon. And the torch, therefore, passes. I mean, I'm tremendously enthusiastic about this. I love this sort of stuff. But, you know, we have a heavy responsibility of holding that torch and handing it on to other people. We are simply bearers of this for a certain period of time. And you can't make the assumption that this just stays with the generation. You don't have to do anything. They'll carry on, and self-evident, it just sort of stays with them. You know, all the time you have to nudge it.
You certainly do. Peter, thank you very much indeed. That's all from us for the UK tonight. More buildings being lit up, as you can see, around the country to mark VE Day. Yalda is here with the world next.